Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Faz.
And I'm Rich. Why did I draw that out?
Oh, I dropped a different inflection at the start. I was like, some of your retro gaming needs.
Emphasise how light we are on that front.
A tiny amount of your retro gaming needs.
Token amount.
And so this is one of our Freeplay Fortnightly podcasts, which we've not done since the 27th of November.
No,
and so
who's
therefore,
counting?
Yeah, no, that is in. So skip the fortnightly. We're meant to do this every fortnight, but we've been doing what would we class it? Specials, I guess, over the festive period and
other things,
doing whatever the fuck we want. You know, that is in. Yeah, it's fine. That's sorry Spotify for giving us this platform, idiots.
Yeah.
You know. All free. So yeah, this is a Freeplay Fortnightly podcast. An overview of the arbitrary rules we've set ourselves / me forced Rich into, and Rich is complying so far.
Grumpily.
Yeah, grumpily. So we take a game, we keep it secret from each other, and then we play said game, or have played said game in the past. We review it, and then we hope that our partner in crime can give the correct score we've got on our head. Which, lo and behold, we've given ourselves a bit of tension around that, because we know in December, when it rolls round, we want to be in the good score brackets.
It's going to get ugly.
'Tis the season for getting haggard as fuck. So there is, this little, what is it? Got some meat in the game. What's the saying?
Well, it depends on the rest of the sentences.
There's some importance tied to how good your review is, and
yeah. Like it matters.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yes. So
it really doesn't.
Well, no, it doesn't. The last one we did. So you did the micro Game Gear, and I did Phoenix Wright. And that did matter to your wife, who was livid at me. So
yeah, she's very unhappy with you.
Yeah,
Still is.
But did I give the score, though? Or did you give the score?
Oh, I can't remember. But the point is, either way, you hadn't played the entirety of the game, was her point. Because she feels as though there's quite a lot that clicks into place and elevates it in the kind of final parts of it.
And we'll never know.
Well, apparently not.
Yeah, so, never have to know.
Yeah,
so.
Well, she has offered to come on and do like a kind of her review of various bits of Phoenix Wright.
I personally declined the offer. I don't know
I'll tell her you said that. Didn't just decline, he personally declined.
Well,
if you'd usually send a messenger or something. Oh, Faz's telegraph boy is here.
It's usually just like my Google Meets, just like, just like someone will put me in a meeting and I'll just decline it and they'll be like, no,
he sent a pigeon instead.
Yeah, there'll be no fucking note or anything. I'll be like, I just did that just to piss you off. I'm not coming to you.
You want me? Come get me.
Yeah. You have to rip me from my desk, you bastard. So, who wants to go first? We should really decide this for the podcast, but we don't, because we're shit.
You want to do rock, scissors, paper?
Oh yeah, okay. We've done this before. This worked pretty well. Didn't it? Right, okay. So we go on. So we go 1, 2, 3, and then show.
Yeah.
Right,
okay,
yeah.
Right.
1, 2, 3.
Oh,
to draw with scissors.
Oh.
We're scissoring. 1, 2, 3. Hey, scissors cuts paper. So who goes first? Me? Okay.
I should go.
You should go first. Right, okay, you go first.
Because mine is Alex Kidd in Miracle World, and a large part of it hinges on rock, scissors, paper.
Oh, right, okay, that makes sense. I didn't know that. Okay.
You fall into my elaborate trap.
Rock pizza paper? Rock pissing on paper?
Rock piss paper.
Yeah.
This kind of stems back to...
Rock piss paper.
That's a different game entirely.
I need to work out who wins.
This goes back to Christmas. So we met up with some friends of ours, and we were chatting, and one of them had a look through our episode list on Spotify. Hi, Michael.
like a menu at a high-value restaurant.
Basically, because he said that he hadn't listened yet, but was kind of curious to know what we've been talking about.
I'll have the red.
Well, he said there's no Master System stuff on here. And I was like, that is absolutely correct. I should do something about that.
Apologies, Michael.
So here we are. Full disclosure, this is the Sega Ages version of Alex Kidd that's on the Switch. So you get the kind of Master System original, and then you have what they refer to as a kind of Ages mode, which has the snazzy FM sound from the FM sound chip you could use on the Master System. That sounds marginally different.
Can we just check in with Michael at this point that he's okay with this disclosure that it's, that like the sound might be a bit more snazzy. Rich might have enjoyed the snazzier version.
By the way. But the Ages version has slightly different sound, but it also gives you kind of like an optional rewind and stuff like that. I think both versions, both the original version and the Ages mode, let you use save states and stuff like that. There's a little challenge mode on there as well, so there's a couple of the levels that it has taken, shrunk them right down, and in one case sets you against the clock, and in another case, I think it's against the clock as well, like a time trial for like solving a sort of maze puzzle, basically. And that's kind of all there is to it, really. The original game itself is bastard hard.
Okay.
It's one of those ones that, like, I cheated my fucking guts out to get to the end of it just to see how long the game was in its entirety, and I came in at about an hour. But it's of that era where you are going to have to work for that hour, like to be able to sit there and do it in one sitting. Will take you several hours to get to that point. So I am not at that point. I am objectively terrible at this game. And at first blush, it kind of looks like Super Mario. You're running, you're jumping. You can punch stuff.
I was going to say, like, this is one of these games so that I know absolutely fuck all about.
Right.
That is in, so Alex is a kid.
So there is
there
is a plot. I couldn't tell you much about it because I don't understand. You basically, I think, have to save your kingdom from this kind of invading evil dude called Janken, which is like a kind of, I think it's a Japanese name for rocks scissors paper.
Okay.
And so I was going to get to this, but, you've asked. And you'll kind of defeat these bosses on the way who have heads that are shaped like a fist, a scissor kind of symbol, and a hand, and it's all fucking freaky. But you play rock, scissors, paper with them. Instant death if you lose.
As we all know.
And
after the podcast,
international standard rules.
Yeah, you will wither away after this podcast. Yep. I've set a timer going. So.
Occasionally you might have to do towards the end you have to do a boss fight instead. But you basically just go on this grand adventure to rescue princess, save kingdom, etc., so on and so forth. Like I say, it looks like Mario to start with, but first screens you're moving down, and then you're swimming and stuff like that. So straight off the bat, it feels quite different. You've got blocks that you can punch out, and it kind of has a puzzle vibe to it, where certain items will be in certain blocks. Certain blocks could just spawn an enemy that'll kill you and stuff like that. And
this yawn isn't because I'm bored. I genuinely
fine.
just,
I'm going to keep talking anyway. It seemed like the classy thing to do was not draw attention to it, but hey, here we are.
I'm not classy. I'm sorry.
So you go through, and it's got these kind of puzzle elements to it, and it can get a bit mazy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere that like the games kind of started out as it was meant to be a Dragon Ball tie-in, the manga and the anime and stuff. And when you look at it through that lens, you can kind of see a lot of the DNA.
It sounds, now you're kind of like, oh, okay,
yeah. I could see that that character being a dinky little Goku back in the day, and some of the items you pick up, that was meant to be, this, that, the other. So that side of it was kind of fun. And you go through, you get things like vehicles and stuff like that. You can get like a little motorbike, you can get a little helicopter and all that. And yeah, it's interesting. It's different. It's I can see why for quite a while there before Sonic popped up. Alex Kidd was, the Sega's guy, and I can see why it is similar to but distinct from Mario. And, the momentum and the hit detection, stuff like that, takes a little bit of getting used to. There's a bit of, like, some tricky jumps and things like that. And obviously, like, the rock, scissor, paper, instant death stuff, I can imagine it would have been so frustrating back in the day, like,
because that's just so random.
Yeah, like you I think you can get an item that will help, but
the rock, obviously.
Well, funnily enough, I actually made some good progress from just picking rock all the time. But like there's an item that will show you what your opponent's thinking and stuff like that.
Right, okay.
But you've got to be able to buy it, or find it, or there's these kind of gotchas that
my opponent's thinking, I'm going to kill you after this game.
Yeah, basically.
Paper, scissors.
So, like, it's the kind of thing where it looks simple, but there is actually quite a lot to get in and learn. Where am I going to find this item? Where am I going to get that amount of money? When am I going to, how am I going to approach this?
Yeah.
The vehicle bits that I played seem to me as though you can complete them even without the vehicle and stuff like that, which is kind of a nice touch. They're kind of optional. A couple of times it seemed as though the stage would just loop until you fell out of, say, your helicopter or something like that, and kind of found the goal underwater.
It always freaks me out when that
stuff
happens.
Like that. Every time. Gets me.
It's like the ghost. It's like I said about the ghost house on Mario, where it's just like it's going to keep on looping until you pick up the button.
Yeah, but it's that kind of like that puzzle side of it coming in again, and it's like there's quite a few bits where when you know,
yeah.
Until then, you're fucked. And like there were
life.
There's various bits like that, and like mazes that you can work out and work your way through. But if I wasn't playing in that kind of ages mode where I could rewind it and stuff like that. Incidentally, really fucking helpful for rock, scissor, paper, being able to rewind 10 seconds of time. Yeah. But it's the sort of thing that you've got to get in and learn. So yeah, like it's bright, it's breezy, it's it's got a music loop that, despite the number of times you will hear it, doesn't grate too much or anything like that. And yeah, like I enjoyed my time with it. It's, I don't know if it's the sort of game that you're going to spend, tens of dozens of hours playing.
It sounds like the perfect Sega Ages game.
Yeah.
Did it cost like £2 in the Switch, or was it £5 or something?
Yeah, I think there was a sale on at the time. Yeah. Like, I think normally it's about £5, but I think I picked it up for, might even have been a little bit less. I think I might have had some points or something. So I think I might have paid like £1.50 for it or something ridiculous.
They're so good, aren't they? Just to kind of get those, like, I think there's like 10 in the collection, I think, on there. And that's where, picked up like Outrun, and they've got like the couple of Sonics and stuff, but they're so worth it. I mean, and it sounds like this is, worth the money as well. Like a couple of quid you paid.
Yeah, and I picked up a few at the same time because they're made by M2 and stuff like that. So like the emulation's good. I like the extra features that M2 try and put in. Basically anything they're doing.
Yeah.
So off the back of this, I went in and picked up like Shinobi and Virtua Racing and there was something. Outrun actually, and had a couple floating around anyway. So like would definitely recommend if you're in the mood for something that's kind of like Mario, but crucially, and I can't emphasize this enough, not Mario. Like, it is quite different when you get into it and start playing it properly.
Sounds like Mario, Rambo Mario.
Maybe not quite, but
it's the helicopter that did it for me.
But it's definitely got its own distinct vibe.
Yeah.
I sort of feel a bit daft for sleeping on it as long as I did. And then off the back of this, I ended up doing a load more research about whether or not I could get like one of the the converter cartridges to play Master System games on my clone Mega Drive, and turns out I could.
I was going to say, can you?
Yeah. And it turns out Master System's really cheap to collect for. So
shit, really?
Yeah,
I would have thought. Although I have seen them, floating around on the sort of, eBay and stuff. It's like you see regularly, C64 and Master System seem to come up in gluts, and nobody seems to be bidding on them. So
So like there may well be other Master System games in our future,
and in our past and our future. And so, how does it look like it performs as a 8-bit? Is that 8 megabit?
I think so. Yeah.
Does it look like? What I'm trying to get to really is that, because I'd say that my gaming knowledge builds more from Mega Drive era.
Yeah.
So going back further than that, I always find it, especially in the same sort of system. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, as in the always like you said, you can build your Master System into your Mega Drive and stuff. Like, as in, I always find it really hard to sort of get my head around going from tiny little blocks that don't look like anything. It's like, oh, it's Frogger, and I'm like, what the fuck is that? I can't tell what the hell that is. Do you know what I mean? It's like, in retro game, they're always like, oh, look at this game. Of like, back in this game, it was like 1982, and I'm like, you've got like a screenshot of it, and it's just random blocks. I'm like, so where does this sit on that kind of scale? Like, as in how does it look and feel?
It's nowhere near as abstract as some of the old Atari stuff, if that's what you're getting
Probably,
at. It looks great. It's like an NES game, but I would say more colourful. I think the Master System stuff, from what I've played and mucked about with, I'm genuinely starting to think that, in general, I prefer the sound of Master System games to like the NES and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, the NES stuff is iconic and classic. I'm not denying that, but there's something about the sound of the kind of default Master System stuff that really appeals to me. And I've only just kind of discovered that recently.
That's cool though. Now you've got,
now I've got a thing, and it kind of weirdly, playing this like reawakened one of my earliest gaming memories, which was playing Paperboy on a Master System. And so like it's colourful, it's vibrant, it's certainly with M2's spit and polish, it's clear and it's crisp. It's got that proper sort of Sega Blue sort of skies and stuff like that. That's in there, like proper Sega Blue. And like
really had a copyright in that colour.
I'm pretty sure they've already done it. But like it's to look at it, I think it's a really pretty game. I do. And
I kind of want to play it now.
Yeah, for want of a couple of quid, I would definitely recommend it. Don't get me wrong, like I could totally see why people would find it frustrating. I can totally see why people wouldn't necessarily think it's their kind of cup of tea. But it spurred me on to explore the Master System a little bit more. And already I've got a little note to myself up at the top here of Wonder Boy 3: The Dragon's Trap, which is like a kind of side-scrolling action RPG thing on a fucking Master System that cool. Like it looks great. And again, like all those sorts of things, like Shinobi, stuff like that, it's definitely sort of opened my eyes to the kind of the value of the system. And as somebody that has been, and the more I do these podcasts, the more I realise, still am like a proper fucking Sega boy through and through. I'm really, really shocked that I've not kind of delved into the Master System a little bit more.
What a sheltered life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Led, under those Sega blue skies.
Yeah. So we'll be doing more digging, I think is fair to say. But yes, like I see why it was as highly regarded as it was. I see why it ended up being like not just a packing game, like it was baked into the fucking hardware of the Master System later on. And all that kind of stuff. I totally see why. And I can see why a lot of people have some very, very fond memories of it.
Cool. So that sounds like a really positive review. Yeah, I mean, this feels like one of those games where I feel like probably give it a little bit less nowadays, but at the same time, like you just sound like like it would, like you said, nice, bright, breezy. And I always feel like 7 out of 10 is like a good score for bright and breezy. But I'm being a bit harsh there. Is this almost an 8 out of 10 game? That because you said it made it sound like it was one of the better games probably on the system, but you've never played many more on the system. So I'm gonna go be positive. I'm gonna say it's gonna be an 8 out of 10. This for me, yeah.
All right.
Which probably a little bit higher maybe than you had in mind.
I would have probably given it a 7.
Okay.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure if I've written it here, but one thought that occurred to me was that I think I would have had a real difficulty working out if I was scoring the Sega Ages package or the game itself. I think if I was playing it on an original Master System, it would have fucked me right off.
Yeah.
And I think I would have hated it. But as a sort of modern, convenient version of an easy way of dipping your toe into it, and like that Ages mode is a really effective training mode.
Yeah.
Because like I tried the sort of challenges, and then did the Ages mode and failed and learned and failed some more and then went back in, and I was better. I was demonstrably getting better at the game.
So
well, I was going to say I would have given the overall package a 7, an easy 7.
Right, okay, so then it might be. Well, it doesn't matter now. I've said the numbers; they're out there, and we all know what the rules are. No, we don't. But
make it up as we go.
And for other rules, I was working it out towards the end, just because I was like, right, well, I need to work this out and make it sound really cool on the pod. And that is that piss would just be the same as scissors. It just soak through paper. You know what I mean? Whereas, like, if someone threw a rock at you while you were pissing, it would hurt. So that all works out. Like, rock breaks piss apparatus, and and no one wants pissy paper. So there we go. Works a treat. So is there a segue from piss? Probably not. I played Gears of War.
Nice.
I have never played Gears of War before. Gears of War came out in like 2005, I think. But I played the remastered or remake, the ultimate version from 2015. And one thing, so this is a bit of a weird one for me. I wasn't necessarily that interested when Gears of War came out. I had an Xbox 360 for a little while. But I'd never picked it up. I remember being around at my friends' houses and they were playing it and absolutely hanging off it. And I was like, I'd see it over people's shoulders and I thought, oh, that looks like a bit like just a grey generic.
The great brown era.
Yeah. It definitely had that feel to it. And I'd see them playing for a bit and it just looked kind of samey. That is in the sort of... but then when I was looking for something to play, I saw it come up on... on my Game Pass. I promise not all of my games will come through on Game Pass. It's such a good service. It's ridiculous. But it came out. I was like, I should really give it a try because I have thought that when you see it on lists of greatest games ever and stuff, and you think, what, Gears of War? Like, isn't whatever? Like, isn't it's like, and then you see sort of taglines where it's like, oh, it created the third person cover genre, like, is in cover shooter genre. I'm like, that's not a fucking genre. Like, is in get off your high horse. Yeah, no, like, get off your high horse. And I was like, so I kind of went in very closed mind into this game.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, right, okay, it'll just be probably straightforward. Like, and I even thought I probably wouldn't play that much of it. Maybe play a couple of hours and see what it's like, and I might not even review it for the podcast. How little I knew of this game and how much it has grown on me over the last week and a half of my life. So, does it need to be in a lofty height of creating its own genre? Looking at what a third-person shooter is or has been since then, looking at Ghost Recon and games of that ilk, I can see why people kind of still point to this and say, oh, it's one of the best, or if not the best, or the creator of a third-person shooter.
It is kind of weird having a third-person shooter without cover in it, and I don't know if that's just because Gears of War did it and then everybody did it. Because whenever I'm playing a third-person thing now, I'm looking for a cover button. Like, it's instinctive now, and I don't have the Gears of War to blame for that.
Yeah, I think very much so. And I think that so when you looked at all the reviews of the Gears of War games as well, 1 and 2 kind of come up as the best, kind of in the series, and the ultimate version of 1 regularly became the sort of, this is the quintessential Gears of War, you should play this one. So I was like, right, okay, yeah, no, fuck it, I'm going to give it a go. And yeah, I did I fall in love with it? I fell in to a pile of massive affection with it. Like, we fell into lovely teddies, with hearts on them together. Yeah, it just, what does it do really well? It's kind of basic, very basic in its story, in so much that you kind of have to read around it a little bit to find out about the history of the there's 2 factions of humans that are fighting each other, and then during this war, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, these locust horde come from below the planet and destroy all the humans pretty much, until the humans are like, right, well, we should nuke our own cities to destroy all the hordes. And then you think, oh, well, like, I kind of hate in sort of post-apocalyptic sort of fashion where, and this happens in a lot of different types of media, where it's like, oh, the whole world ended and we nuked everything and stuff, but there's actually a shitload of people left, and there's actually, this type, and there's actually loads of the enemy left, and it didn't actually help at all. And I'm like, what was the point? Like, is it like as a story point? Like, it feels like, a bit stupid that story point that is like, always a big mechanism is always like, actually didn't change anything, didn't really set up the plot very well at all. Like,
But we learned a lot about the futility of war again.
Yeah, the gears of them. But yeah, so I would say story-wise, it doesn't do a lot of heavy lifting. The characters don't either necessarily.
Do lift a lot.
Yeah. Yes, they do. But like, he plays Marcus Phoenix, and you don't really get a lot of insight into him or his team. You kind of pick up the foursome maybe about a quarter of the way into the game. You got Cole, Baird, and Dom, and I feel like from sort of judging from afar before I was playing the game, people were like, oh, like you feel a real bromance and stuff between them, and these characters are really larger than life and stuff. And I was like, even now at the end of the game, I'm like, I didn't really get a feel for the characters like at all, particularly. Like, it wasn't like I was watching fucking Band of Brothers or something, where I'm like crying at the end. I was a bit like, they're fine, they're okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're serviceable. Like Marcus, like they've got some good one-liners and stuff, but even they're a bit like, like they're not like laugh it up fuzzball one-liners. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not like,
It's not quotable.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? I'm like, I can't remember a single thing they've said. But at the same time, like I was happy enough with that, like, because in the end, the gameplay of the game really shines through, and it almost lends itself to them not necessarily being front and centre, and the story not necessarily being front and centre. I don't really care why I'm being sent different places and stuff. What I really cared about and what came across really strong and really well was, and this is one of those futility of war things, and it's almost like a bit of a Saving Private Ryan thing, or The Longest Day, that is in like that idea of a never-ending feeling of shit going wrong, like as in during war. It's like, right, we got sent on to do this, like I got broke out of prison, and then I ran into these fucking bad guys, and then I ran into these bad guys, and then this bad thing happened, and then this bad thing happened, and it's just like, and that is such a well-worn trope, but really good, like a really well-worn trope. That is in, like, it makes sense that, you in a war zone, like you're the last bastion, and these 4 guys that are like, right, okay, this helicopter got shot down, you've got to go to that site. You're like, oh, for fuck's sake. But like, fine well, you're like, oh yeah, I'm up for this again, let's go for another one. Like, I love that vibe, and it just rolls into the next chapter so well. Like, as in, and you can see why the game, like you get immersed in it, because you're like, I've played an hour, I've played 2 hours, I've played 3 hours. Like, when do I get that natural break point? You kind of, when you don't, even the chapters ticking over, you don't. And that's not a negative, that's a positive. So you find yourself sort of blasting through the game, literally. In terms of like, it's a bit difficult, like the A button does a lot. It does a lot of things. You dive, you cover, you climb. You can get yourself killed quite often. And that can sometimes come with a bit of sort of, it can come at a cost where sometimes the checkpoints can be a little bit lengthy. That is in, so you can do quite a lot and then press the A button twice by mistake, jump over and get your head blown off with a shotgun. You're like, for fuck's sake, by a general drone. The guns are fine. There's a lot of the sameness in this game. The enemies are all the same, bar a couple. But generally, as you work your way through the game, you've kind of got a big drone character, and then you've got the captain of the drone character, and then you've got these little feral things that are like lickers from like Resident Evil and stuff. Like you kind of just get a lot of them, and then it's just like moving to the next bit of rubble, and you're like, right, okay, I've got to fight more of these guys. And the guns are kind of samey. You just get a lot of assault rifles and then a generic shotgun. So the main bulk of the game is quite samey. But then they throw in a lot of curveballs just for a few minutes here and there that you just go, this is fucking brilliant. The Hammer of Dawn. The Hammer of Dawn is so good. Like, it's just, I mean, the name is stolen straight from Halo. It's ripped like from Halo's gut. But just using that weapon and how, whilst you can only use it in certain circumstances when you're stood under the sky, like they make it readily available towards the start of the game in the first chapter. So it's almost like, and not just for like certain boss battles. You aren't guided to use it for that. And obviously it's usually like, oh, when you need a Hammer of Dawn, it's like, oh, there's just one there, mate. You might pick that up, you know what I mean? But there is also around that boss battle sometimes, like where you're just fighting these generic drones or these things flying through the sky, like, whatever they're called, Nemesis. Like, you can just shoot them with it and you're like, I feel like a fucking boss and I could probably do this for like 10 minutes. Like, so that's pretty cool. Like emergence holes. So basically the idea that your enemies come up from below the ground and you can throw a grenade in there to close that hole up and make it easier for yourself if you've got a grenade. But then also the fact that they'll come from any angle and stuff. And, and it's like, what else is a bit of a curveball from the norm? 2 enemies, the Krill, which are the night level where you've got to go, stay out the shadows unless you just die immediately because these things kill you. That's fucking brilliant. That's such a good idea. And it's probably been done 1,000 times since now. But thinking about it, this must have been like one of the original times that it was like, stay out the dark because you'll just get your head eaten. And it's like brilliant, And it's such a big horror aspect to this game. Much more so than I expected when I went into it. It was a bit more Dead Spacey than not horrific, weird zombies and things. That is in freakish animals like scaring the shit out of you. But like there are moments where they create the ambience of a bit horrific and like you said,
it takes a bit of time to slow down and breathe.
Yes,
but not terribly often. But
no, it doesn't.
Because it, like you say about trying to find that kind of natural break and the pace of it. From what I can remember from when I played it, it doesn't so much stop as take that quiet moment to ratchet up the tension. And then you have that kind of catharsis of being able to go guns blazing and run around again. Because was it the first one that had like that boss fight where you're basically against something that's blind and is like tracking you by scent or sound or something?
So yeah, the Berserker.
That was it.
Yeah. Playing an action game, a third-person shooter, and then suddenly being thrown into Resident Evil 3.
Yeah.
Where, for 2 parts of the game where you are trapped with this thing running towards you, and to get it, you have to lure it to do your bidding by knocking down walls or knocking down structures. To make it do that and jump out of the way in time with your massive hulking Marcus is quite a skill and takes a few times to go. And so it's not that jump scare in the cinema where you're like, oh god, what was that? But that jump scare where it's coming for you and you're like, and jump, and you're like, oh, and you work yourself up and you can feel the adrenaline pumping within your body because you're like, I need to get this just right to get out of the way of this thing. What a fantastic couple of set pieces that is when they've got that in there. And when you get to the point where you're like, you've just about lured it outside, and you get that feeling, I've just survived, and now I can drop the hammer of dawn on your fucking head, and it feels so cathartic that you're like, you've just terrorized me for about half an hour when I've just been struggling through this structure to understand how to get through it, and you've blasted through this wall behind me, and you feel the sunshine upon yourself in real life. You're like, and then you're just like, I'm going to stand really still because you can smell me, but you can't see me, and I'm just going to get this massive weapon out and fry you to pieces, you shit. You're like, oh, that feels great. One of gaming's great moments, and this is what it feels like. This game, it feels like it's I would say almost a bit of a generic feel, and we talked about graphically before, like the brown sort of grey look of it. Yeah. Like you've got average moments scattered with great gaming moments in there. And I can see why people would then go, all right, okay, well actually this is one of the great games, and I absolutely love it. But I feel like people are remembering the great moments. But there is a lot of, I don't want to say dross, I think that'd be really harsh, but there's a lot of moments where you're kind of just chugging through drones, and I think it's almost like, oh, we're ramping up the difficulty here, but actually they don't ramp the difficulty up, it just is more of the same stuff, and you're like, you feel like they probably could have done a bit of a better sort of job. I want to give it credit as well for one thing that I just remember there is like the reloading mechanism of landing that correctly as well. Like that is something that gives you a bit of focus during a fight. That is because it really does make a difference that between life and death. That is when you are kind of going through your sort of clips, and you get to a point where you're like, I really need to reload quite quickly here, and then you miss it. You're like, fuck, and you're like, oh man, and Marcus reacts in that way. You're like, yeah, no, and now I'm gonna die. Now I will die. But yeah, just so I feel like lots of different things about this game. Lots of positive, but also some stuff where I'm like, you can kind of see where I think. I feel like other games could probably propel themselves to be better than what this is. But then I also see a lot of, if you go to, and I looked it up after this, if you go to best third-person shooter games, this kind of still tops the list, or is in the top 3 every single time. So has anything done it better? It doesn't sound like a lot of things have. So I feel weird about this game. I felt compelled to play it. And before we finish and you give it a score, one thing I do want to put in its favour as well is settings. So there's some really beautiful set pieces in this game, especially on the remastered Ultimate Edition. The emulsion mine, the glow from that colour when you're kind of like fighting down there, that's really cool. And like I guess Phoenix Mansion as well, where you're kind of going through the old mansion. It feels like a bit of a maze, and everything's covered in sort of vines and stuff and crumbling. Really some very good settings that I was very impressed with. More impressed than I expected to be at the start as well. So, and I'd probably say that about this game as a whole. I was more impressed than I expected to be at the start.
Nice.
And there we are. That's my Gears of War experience.
War has been geared. It's one of those ones that I always wonder if history's going to be kind to it, but like ultimately there are some design decisions from the time that are just the sorts of things that you would perhaps do differently nowadays that are going to hobble it a little bit. Full disclosure, like I absolutely friggin' loved it back in the day, like, but not necessarily Gears of War 1. Like I was definitely more of 2 and 3. And weirdly, by the time you get to 3, I was kind of more invested in the characters than I thought I would have been. To the extent that in my little collection of figurines over there, Marcus is one of the few with the dubious honour to actually be in there.
Yep.
So, like...
The biggest of all.
He's the biggest, weirdly.
They're not...
he's a hefty lad, though.
I was going to say, they're not technically human, are they? Terran or something they call
something
them.
Like that. But
again, story just doesn't matter.
And I think as well, like, talking of the weaponry and stuff like, chainsaw under the rifle, the Lancer and all that kind of stuff, like is pointed at as, oh, well, that's iconic and stuff like that. Basically, for me, a large part of how I got into it was kind of twofold, and that was Marcus's voice actor is Bender from Futurama.
Yeah.
And once you hear it, you can't unhear it.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, okay.
And B, like, as far as I'm concerned, like, I mean, I used to do a lot of Warhammer, and this is the greatest Warhammer 40,000 game that never existed, know?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And just the kind of the meaty, chunky feel of everything is not something that comes around terribly often, and it sort of makes it distinct. So from what you've said, because I didn't play any of the remasters,
I mean,
the ultimate type version or anything like that.
As far as I'm aware, that's the only one that's been remade. I think probably just because it's that it is iconic and it's the original and stuff, and it was probably far enough back to do that. Yeah,
because when I played the first one, whenever I think back, it's the Berserker and it's the Krill, and then the rest of it, I really struggle to point at, but I can vividly recall bits from 2 and 3. So, it's interesting to hear about the sort of extra spit and polish that it's had. It feels like an 8 to me. I might be reluctant to give it a 9, but yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with an 8. I think.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that when I look around again, we looked around at reviews and stuff, like you would see this effusive praise for the game, and a lot of it I think is probably, like, say, nostalgia based, because when you look at the original reviews, they were all like 8 out of 10, so they were all like around that. And actually, when I first started, it weirdly enough, and this is, and I think I said to you, is obviously without revealing what the game was. I said the game that I'm playing this week feels like a grower. Like it felt like, and I, when I first went into it, and even playing the first sort of hour or so, I was a bit like, it feels a bit bland and generic, and then you get the Berserker, the Hammer of Dawn, the Krill, that you get that sort of 3 or 4 gaming moments where you're like, this kicks ass. That is at this exact moment, and I get that, like you say, and I'm not trying to do a Phoenix Wright when I'm like trying to bow out and not do the whole experience and stuff. But you think about it, this is one whole game, like, as in, and I'm aware that there is a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5. You know what I mean? It's like I get that, but I do. I think that every single thing should be held as an entity as itself, as it was almost in a way. Like, as in that, whilst this is a remastered version, it's like, how well did it round out that story? How well did it round out everything it was doing? And I'm happy with that score. I would have been in and around that, but I probably moved from like a 6 in the first couple of hours to like almost like flexing to like a 9. Like, and to come back down to like a 7/8, probably maybe 8/9 actually probably is about right. So I'm glad it's come across that way. I know that I had a few moments there where I was like, oh, this is negative and this is bland and this is, but actually I wasn't meant to be that way. It's just almost like, I do. You think about these iconic games that are held up so high, and actually, is it 100% amazing all the time? And is any game.
But I think as well, for my part, for say 3 having a good payoff and stuff like that, it didn't change much of the bones from 1, but it did tweak some of the aspects of it, like, character beats or pacing and stuff like that. And so I think it's completely valid to look at it and go, well, perhaps there were elements of it that were a little bit weaker, that didn't necessarily get completely ironed out later on, but are the sorts of things that, later on they can spend a bit more time on characters and things like that. So yeah.
No, cool. Thanks for listening to that, then, guys. I don't think we've got anything else to say at the end of that, because
no, you're free to go.
Yeah, sometimes we just patter around at the end and go this and that, but it's just like, it sounds like, two good games, and almost like for me personally, and for you, it's your first dip into the Master System. That isn't the first, but like, I guess the best game, one of the best games on it, and for me to go back and play a game that felt like everyone's played and I've never played. Like, it's nice to do that. So, and that's what the pod's all about, really. So, yeah, no, cool. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you again soon.
Cheers.